If I told you that all the best corporate pilot jobs go to people who have an in one form or another, you probably wouldn't be surprised. So the question is then, how do you get that in that we all so desperately want and need? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to start with 6 strategies for online networking, followed by 9 strategies for offline networking, and then at the very end, I'm going to share with you my time-tested, super well proven by yours truly, networking super hack that's going to allow you to start conversations and build relationships with people who are complete strangers to you today. So if that sounds good, smash the heck out of that like button and let's dive into it. All right, so no matter what type of networking you're doing, be it offline or online, the very first thing that you need to make sure that you have dialed in is your own LinkedIn profile. It should clearly state that you're a pilot. It should have a good-looking professional picture of you. It should have a good work history. It should have all the ratings you have. You might want to keep your hours on there. In other words, don't look like an amateur hack on your LinkedIn profile. So once you have your LinkedIn profile dialed in, the next strategy that you want to do is look for aviation focused LinkedIn groups. Now be wary of LinkedIn groups. Some of them have lots of people, but they're not active. So you got to make sure that you're choosing an active group. And then what you really want to focus on is just being a positive contributing member to that group. Comment on other people's posts. Ask smart questions. Share interesting tidbits of news. Do not promote yourself and don't be the guy in there who says, hey, do you know anybody that's hiring? Because that's not how you foster good relationships. In addition to LinkedIn groups, there are also all sorts of professional online forums and communities. There's pilot-specific websites like PRUNE, the Professional Pilot Rumor Network, airline pilot forums, flight info, etc. There's corporate aviation subforums. You might find these on Reddit. Just find them by Googling Ask ChatGPT. Always, just like with the LinkedIn, be professional, be curious. Don't be the guy that's whining and complaining that you can't find a job. Ask smart questions, comment on other people's posts, share other people's posts. Do whatever you can to be a contributing member rather than just someone who's trying to get a free ride without really doing anything. In addition to these forums, there's all sorts of virtual events and webinars that you can participate in. So there's the National Business Aviation Association, there's Women in Aviation International, and there are a host of others. And again, you can find these on Google, you can find them using ChatGPT. So whenever you participate in these, don't be the silent observer. Ask questions, take initiative, show that you are curious. The more you do that, the more people will notice you. So now let's talk about social media, something that is obviously very near and dear to my heart. So have an Instagram account, have a Facebook profile that is either where your posts are public or maybe consider creating a Facebook page. I personally find that the Facebook profile works just fine, but make sure that you're sharing photos from your flights and things about your experience. Just look at what other pro pilots are doing on their social media and treat that as a masterclass on the things that you should be doing. If they're getting a lot of engagement on a certain type of post, then you want to create a similar type of post. The whole idea here is so that if someone comes to check you out because they saw you in a forum or they saw some of your content someplace or they saw you on a webinar, you don't look like a jackass, that you look like the professional pilot that you are. The other thing that I highly recommend is that you follow industry influencers. Many people follow me. If you're not already doing that, you may want to consider doing it. And there's lots of other guys and gals out there that you can follow. Just find the people that resonate with you, follow them, like their posts, comment on their posts, but don't be too fast to ask them for help. Like, I can't tell you how many times I get complete strangers sending me a DM that's like this long, asking me for free help and free advice. What do you think I do with those every single time? Usually I don't read them because they're not being respectful of my time. They don't understand that as someone with a large following or large-ish following, I get a lot of messages and I don't have time to read them all. So keep that in mind. And that's why it's good to comment and to share, because you're helping the influencer. They want comments, they want shares, because that tells the algorithm that their piece of content is good, and the algorithm shows it to more people. We get more views, and that's what we really want. So to get what you want, you have to give us what we want. And last but not least, in the online strategies, there's obviously aviation job boards and career websites. And so you're going to want to sign up for sites like Indeed, Glassdoor, BizJet Jobs, and so forth, and make sure that you've got that feed coming into your inbox. And you're going to want to do everything possible to stay visible. And again, just like LinkedIn, if any of these sites require that you have a profile, make sure that you don't have a half-assed profile. Put a lot of effort into it. Put the same content that you put on your LinkedIn profile, just use that same content over and over again for every time you're joining one of these boards or websites. So we've covered the online strategies, but there's a little bit of an elephant in the room for both this and the offline strategies. And that some of you might be thinking, well, what do I say to these people aside from the advice that I've already given you? Like, at some point in time, you're going to want to do an ask. But when should you do that? And what do you say? Well, when you should do it is after you've commented on 3, 4, 5, 6 of their posts, especially if you've asked them questions in the comments and they've replied to you. Now they know that you exist. So when you get a few of those, then maybe it's okay to do a direct message or an ask. And I'm going to explain to you how to phrase that question, what specifically to say at the very end of this video, because that's my networking super hack, and it works extremely well. So stick around until the end for that. All right, the first offline strategy is to attend aviation conferences and trade shows. So there's the National Business Aviation Association, there's the Business Aviation Convention and Exhibition. Those are top networking events in the world of corporate aviation. There's also going to be local and regional conferences. And again, use ChatGPT, use Google to find those. And then when you go to those events, do your homework before you get there. Have a strategy. Look at who the list of attendees are if it's published. Look at who the list of sponsors are if it's published. Have resumes in hand. Have smart questions that you want to ask. Have people that you want to meet. And again, my network super hack that I'm going to explain at the very end of this video, because anytime you're face to face with someone and you say what I'm going to tell you to say, you're going to find you get a very, very positive response. Then you also can join local aviation associations and flight clubs. So there's local chapters of professional organizations like the NBAA, the AOPA, which is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, the EAA, which is the Experimental Aircraft Association. They all have local chapters all over the place. And then there's going to be flight clubs and pilot associations in virtually every town, or every city, I should say, around North America. You can find all those on the Googles and the ChatGPT. You can see what events they're doing, and then you can go ahead and show up to those events to get the FaceTime, say the magic thing that I'm going to tell you to say at the end of this video. Aside from, and setting the magic thing of the super hack aside, anytime you're talking to anyone, always come from a place of showing interest in them, asking for their advice, asking how you can help them, and so forth. Most decent sized regional airports will have an FBO, and that is a fantastic opportunity for visiting and networking, because who's flying in and out of that FBO? People who are on corporate jets, the clientele. Who's flying those jets? The corporate pilots. And a lot of times you're going to find them going to be hanging out in the lunchroom, the cafeteria, the snack room. I've been in my local FBO and I've started conversations with pilots that work at NetJets and pilots that work for all sorts of different places. So when you're there, make sure that you have cards available, ask a lot of questions, ask how they like their job, what their career's been like, how they got to where they are, show interest in them. I sound like a broken record here because this is the basic tenet networking. And then leave your contact info with care, but don't be just like spamming it out like, here's my card, here's my card. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the one who's really, really interested. This is not about seeing how many cards you can hand out or how many resumes you can stuff into someone's hand. This is about building relationships that start with interesting conversations. In other words, be interested in the other person, and in time, they will become interested in you. You can also look for local air shows and charity events or conferences and workshops that you can volunteer at. When you volunteer, you get the opportunity to show your skills. You get the opportunity to meet all the people that are organizing the event. You get the opportunity to do what I call, or take advantage of what I call the law of reciprocity. You're doing something for them. Now, maybe they feel like they need to do something for you, especially if you've been a really terrific volunteer at those events. If you're attending a flight school, you can absolutely leverage that flight school. Every flight school probably knows at least a few corporate pilots. There's going to be CFIs that work for that flight school that probably know a few corporate pilots because the guys that they were instructors with before have gone on, and maybe some of their previous coworkers have gone on to land corporate pilot jobs. So never underestimate the power of meeting people that are right in the flight school that you're already going to almost every day. Now, you heard me earlier in the video talking about seeking out advice. Well, a part of that is seeking out mentors and mentorship programs. Now, there's formal mentorship programs like the WAI, OBAP, and NGPA. You can definitely look for formal mentorships, but don't write off informal mentorships. For example, earlier on when I was doing my research for this video, I typed in corporate pilot into LinkedIn, and there was 17,000 results. Some of those people might be retired, and some of those retired pilots might be at a point where they feel like giving back. I've had plenty of them reach out to me because of the fact that I create all this content, and I get a lot of free advice and guidance from those people. I'm sure that if I was reaching out to them and I was asking for advice and I was asking for smart questions, not just who do you know, that some percentage of the people that I reached out to would respond positively, especially if you use the networking super hack that I'm going to share at the end of this video. All right, so you're going to want to connect also with business aviation departments directly. So this is a big one. So there's two types of what I'll call departments. I mean, Part 135 operators definitely fall into this bucket because they essentially are an aviation department. But you know who else has aviation departments? The Fortune 500. Do you think you could maybe come up a list of the Fortune 500? Yeah, it'd be pretty darn easy to do. And then you can go to their websites, or you can start Googling and figure out if they have an aviation department. When you figure out if they have an aviation department, you can use LinkedIn to figure out who works in that department. So you can send them a message, or if they're in your town, you can drop in. Same approach as always. Don't just say, hey, I'm here looking for a job, because that's what everybody else does. Instead, you can say, hey, I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for guidance. I'm trying to find if there are other events or communities or workshops in this area that I could attend. I'm really interested in furthering my career as a pilot, and I want to be a corporate pilot, etc. You get the idea. And again, the networking super hack will very well for you in this regard. Another thing that happens often, especially in the summer at virtually every airport near you, is hangar talks and barbecues and so forth. Pilots love getting together with other pilots, shoot the shit, as it were. And so anytime there's events, there's barbecues or evening dinners or cocktail, whatever they are, make sure that you are aware of the ones that are within a driving vicinity of wherever you are, or if you're traveling to somewhere else, look for them in the place that you're going to go. And then make sure that you attend those and conduct yourself in the way that I've been describing so far in this video. Be interested in other people, and then they will be interested in you. All right, so with any form of networking, your follow-up is absolutely key. And with the super hack that I'm going to tell you about after this section, follow-up is also key. Though you'll find when you hear me explain this, you won't have to follow up necessarily in the traditional way like I'm about to explain. So anytime you meet anyone anywhere, ask them for their card or ask them if they're on LinkedIn, because you're going to need a way to follow up, to thank them for their time, and to ask them if there's anything that you can do to help them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you do that, how you specifically phrase that in the next section. You want to be organized, so create a way that you've got a systematic follow-up mechanism. You could use Trello and have a Trello card for each person that you meet. You could have a Google Sheet. You could have 3x5 cards and a thing on your desk. Whatever way, you need some way to remind you to be in touch with that person every 30 days or every 60 days or whatever it is that you want to do to make sure that you're able to do those periodic check-ins without just having to rely on your memory. Because if you're just relying on your memory, odds are, if you've got 50 or 60 people that you're trying to build relationships with, you're going to have a really hard time remembering all that stuff. But the follow-up is absolutely critical. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say that if you don't do any follow-up, meeting them to begin with was probably almost a waste of time. All right, you've stuck around to the end. It is time for your reward, and that is my networking super hack. Now, before I get into that, I want to remind you of some of the basics. Again, I said this earlier, quality over quantity. This isn't about spamming your business card or your resume into as many people's hands as possible. Instead, this is about building relationships, ideally that you would foster and nurture so that they last for years, because the larger and more connected you are to your network, the more opportunities that are going to come your way. A big part of that, of course, is your personal branding. A big part of that is your professionalism. A big part of that is you staying current with industry trends. And then finally, being helpful. So a lot of people, when they think about being helpful, and I'm starting to talk about the networking super hack now that I spent years developing, and it paved the way for me. A lot of people, when they think about being helpful, they're just like, well, call me if you need anything. That's not helpful. Nobody's going to call you up to ask you a favor. You need to offer to do something for them. So there's some simple things which are not quite a part of my networking super hack, but they are helpful. If you see someone, for example, that has a crappy LinkedIn profile, you could offer to help them with it. Or if they don't have an Instagram account, or they want one, or they got a crappy looking one, you could offer to help them with it. Now, if you're not a social media expert, no problem. There's a little website called Fiverr, FIVRR.com, and you can, for a very small amounts of money, get people to do all sorts of crazy cool stuff for you and for the people that you are helping. So again, be helpful and be specific in how you're offering that help. Now, finally, I want to explain to you my networking super hack. So whenever you're asking advice or whenever you're talking to anyone, the way to get people's attention is to stroke their ego and to offer to give them something that would be valuable to them. So what would that look like in this scenario? Let's say for everybody that you're reaching out to, you're saying, hey, I would love to have a conversation with you because I'm writing this report. And the report is called Career Strategies for Today's Corporate Pilots. And I need your smart opinion, Mr. Super Smart Expert, Mr. or Mrs. Person, and I'm going to quote you in my report and blah, blah, blah. So people are, oh yeah, I'm really smart. Of course, they're going to quote me in the report. And that's great. You're going to get, so I did this. I had a podcast where I would invite people to be my guest on my podcast. And I produced north of 650 episodes. And so as a result of that, I had this huge network of people because each time I did an episode, I was talking with someone for like an hour, asking them smart questions and building rapport. So why the report versus a podcast? Well, you could absolutely do a podcast. You could do a YouTube channel. Just some people, I wanted to give another alternative to being on the microphone or on the camera, because anybody can write a report. It's really not that hard to do. You could ask ChatGPT for an outline, and then you could just interview all sorts of people, and then you put what you've learned from those conversations into the report. So that's the stroke ego part of the networking super hack. So how is the giving them help part of it? You could give them a free copy of the report, and you want to use the word, I'm going to give you a free copy of this report. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to sell it. You're not saying that you're going to sell it or not sell it or whatever. You're implying that they're getting a deal because they're getting a free copy. And guess what? Everybody who's already a corporate pilot would probably like to further their career, make more money, fly a bigger jet, what have you. Don't you think they might be interested in reading some of the insights and guidance and advice from other smart corporate pilots? Well, duh, of course they're going to want to read that stuff. So you're offering to stroke their ego and give them a copy of this body of work that you're going to put all this effort into creating, and all they have to do is talk to you for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and that's your opportunity to make a really great impression. And then taking advantage of the law of reciprocity, when you go and you give them that report, that's the time you can say, hey, you know what? Is there anyone that you think I should be connected to either interview or submit a resume or whatever? That's when you can do your ask, but you've got to do the legwork beforehand. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. If you think that's a really great idea, let me know in the comments. If you have questions about it, let me know in the comments. And at a minimum, if you're still watching this video, please do smash the like button. And I want to thank you very much for investing your time to watch this. I hope you found it extremely helpful. If you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, you might want to consider becoming one by smashing the subscribing here on YouTube and clicking the little bell. And if you would like to get email notifications whenever I produce a long form video like this in your inbox, you can also go over to my website, flywithtrent.com, and join the email list. And when you do, you can also get access to my free Pro Pilot cheat sheet, which I think you'll find very, very helpful. So thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.